Hey, fellow Giganteers, those of us who like our spirituality with a twist. As you will already have heard in the intro, we are being joined today by the lovely, thoughtful, and just all around wonderful Fayda Shantel. And we're going to talk about many things, but especially things involving relationships, sexuality, polyamory, life, and just, I think, like her experiences being a woman and kind of finding out how she feels about things and who she is and exploring all of that, all of that world, discovery of a person and who they are. So I guess I'll throw the first question over to you, Daniel, because you and Phaedra know each other so well. And I'll be
Yeah,
like a fly on the wall, but like totally. Yeah.
an active fly,
I'll
Eric.
be a buzzy fly. A
Yeah,
buzzy
Eric, you're the unicorn in this trifecta.
new roles. See,
That's
I'm already learning more openness.
see, look at you. You're just growing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Phaedra, thanks for coming on. So far, I've known Phaedra for, I don't know, many years, 13, 14 years, probably something, it's been a long time, but you know, since we started doing those love episodes last year, the relationship episodes last year, Phaedra and I started having more discussions about that as she was, interested in what we were talking about, and in going through her own process, her own journey. We started having these kind of deeper discussions, different discussions around that time. And so, we had been talking about how we wanted to have people on who sort of live in that lifestyle, practice those kinds of things. And after some time, I was like, well, Phaedra, you should come on and tell us a little bit about about some of your adventures and some of your growth process. So given that as the lead in, Faye, which is certainly not much of a lead in per se, but I kind of wanted to start, so tell me a little bit about like where you are in your journey now, and then we'll kind of pick it apart and see how you got here. Normally we kind of start the other way and go, what
Right.
was influenced you, but I want to give people, the audience, a chance to kind of get to know who you are now a little bit, and then we can kind of work forwards and backwards in time.
A little bit like a flashback episode or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's right. Training
Flashback.
montage.
Yeah. Look at the little like
I
thing
love
will
it.
happen and we'll go back, right? Yeah.
That's awesome. Those are the movies that I love.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for having me on.
Of course.
And yeah, so I guess right now, where I'm at, I am a single female. I was married for a while and um, with a partner in a heterosexual marriage. And now I have basically kind of embraced who I am as a woman and my sexuality. So I am in the what they call lifestyle. So the lifestyle would be open, like swingers, openness, open marriages, and in one aspect, polyamory. So I'm kind of just living my life, trying to really understand where I fit in with all that. And I am having fun for the most part. And also with this fun comes a lot of, okay, did that actually serve me? And am I happy? And is this what I want? Is this, where I want, is this aligning with my values? So yeah, but enjoying the process all the ways.
The language thing is really interesting because if you hear someone say the lifestyle, then you know that means something, right? Yeah, for
Yes.
people who've never heard this kind of thing before, there's a certain jargon, there's a certain kind of
Uh-huh.
terminology that people know. So if someone says the lifestyle, you know that
Yes.
they're in the know of what that means, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's considered a lot of, and you say that because it all encompasses so many different things, but we all know it's the lifestyle of, how do they put it? It's non-monogamy, I would say. Ethical non-monogamy.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, lots of terminology with it, lots of rules. So yeah, it's not just a free for all. There's a lot of emotions and people and understanding involved.
And I guess that means like different things to different people, because for some people that might be like an open relationship.
Yep.
Other people, it might
Yep.
be more like a swinger kind of community thing where there's more of a community
Mhm.
element to it too. And then the other
Yeah.
part of it is more like the polyamory part where it's more like, okay, longer term relationships where there's more of that emotional, intellectual, more longer term commitment thing. And I guess, we were talking a little bit off mic, and that's what you're sort of figuring out for yourself now, kind of, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it all comes with its, I feel, pluses and not pluses. So yeah, I would say that I've started off as a what they would call a unicorn, which is a single female that dates couples. And I found that for me, that has really been beneficial to my need for the masculine and the feminine in a relationship, and actually relating to my masculine and feminine on an equal basis. And then because it's more in the swinging community, where is more like you're saying, it's social, but it's very casual. So in the swinging community, it's not really, you make friends and these friends are great. They understand your lifestyle. They understand where you're coming from, but it's more so, we have a party or we're just going to like hang out and something may or may not happen. And that's been where I've been at. However, I realized in this journey over the last year that that might not be enough for me, because I do seek a little bit more connection as far as just being able to have a better relationship with each partner and more communication. And with these types of instances, you've got couples that have their regular lives, they've got families, they've got, just everyday stuff that they're dealing with, and they're not necessarily looking for a new best friend. And so totally accept it, understand it. But I don't know if that's exactly what I want moving forward.
So it's probably just for the lingo of the whole thing. This
Oh yeah.
unicorn is a special one because it's a magical creature that no one can find. The magical creature who wants to be in that situation where, okay, I'm open
Yeah.
to being with both people in the couple, woman,
Mhm.
right? With a
Yeah.
heterosexual couple.
There's a name for the man, and I can't remember what it's called, but there are men that are the same thing too.
And there's magically hard to find.
Yes, yes.
That's the reason that's the reason this name is there. You're like, well, unicorn, where does that come from? It's just the idea that
Right.
it's it's only certain people who will feel like that's what they would be looking for or something, right?
Mhm.
Really quickly. So Faye, you're, talking about like your needs that you're learning as you're kind of going through this process. But, like I foreshadowed earlier, we would do a little bit of flashback. So let's take a moment and do a little flashback here. Cause, for many reasons, I find this fascinating and interesting. How did you when did this desire begin? Like when did it begin for you? And then how did that journey kind of unfold as time has gone on to kind of get you to this place?
Okay, I feel that I became interested in this probably during my teenage years. I
Okay.
think from early on, when my mom listens to this, and she's going to remember this, from very young, I would say 8 or 9 years old, I became very interested in the men and women's body. And I loved to see nakedness, right? I became very interested in, there was a show called The Red Shoe Diaries, and I would watch it because, it was very sexy. And so I would sneak and watch that. So my interest for that was very young. And then that, as I got older, I dabbled in being with multiple people in high school. And I knew at the age of 13, I was bisexual. And so that, I think, as the years went on, I pretty much only dated men. And so I don't think that ever went away. I think that I knew I wanted, that I had the capacity to give my time and love to more than one person, until I met, quote unquote, the one, and got myself hitched.
Mm.
That was not what you expected the end of that sentence to be. That was a good setup.
Yeah. So
Maybe
there's
like
that.
before we get through it, I don't know what y'all think. It's, we try to like bop back and forth a little bit with these things. So I think like childhood sexuality, we haven't talked about that too much, that kids have sexual feelings.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think it's always that we are comfortable talking about that in our culture, but they do.
Yeah.
I can
Mhm.
remember like being sick with like a little flu or something when I was a kid. Maybe I was like 5 or 6 or something, and I got to stay up late. And there was like a Marilyn Monroe movie playing on the TV that my grandpa was watching. And I was like, it was like a religious experience. I'm just like, wow. And I remember thinking, like, I'm gonna have to come up with some excuse to stay up every single night with my
Right.
grandpa to sit and
Yeah.
watch this, and there wasn't nakedness and that, but it was just like, that kind of like sexual
Oh,
feeling that was coming through.
absolutely.
And I was like, wow, and you look back on it like, well, of course I had those feelings, right? You know,
Right.
I
and
used to
yeah,
I used to steal the for those who are a little bit older, there used to be a store called Sears, and maybe they still exist. I don't know, but many of them
No,
closed down.
right.
But
No.
they used to, before the internet, they only had catalogs, and so you get the Sears catalog, and you could see, you could see what they had. You know where this is going, Phaedra. I used I used to steal the catalog, go under my bed into the into the like
Yeah.
the ladies' bra and underwear section, and like lick the page. And I'm like 5, maybe 4, like just as anytime I saw that catalog, I stole it immediately. I was like, oh, I gotta
Oh,
run.
it's amazing.
Yes.
I would feel them too. I wouldn't lick them, but I would definitely be like, why don't any of these women have nipples in their lace bra? It's so weird. I tried to look. You couldn't see them.
He's scratching the page off. It's not working.
Draw them in.
yeah. So it's
But yeah, I agree with you.
yeah, there's like the kind of it's like I guess there's so many goofy things in someone like Freud. He's really goofy, but like Daddy did talk about, so at
Oh
least it's
yeah.
like, hey, kids have these feelings,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and at least we could acknowledge that. Um, and then I guess, even realizing that I worked at some point in my life with a lot of gay male patients. I was working on a Ryan White grant and I was treating HIV and AIDS.
Okay.
So, all kinds of patients, but that was a subclass of patients for sure, right?
Yeah.
And I have this conversation about when people started to realize that their sexuality was different. And, obviously for you were saying, oh, by 13, this is getting pretty clear. How did it feel to you though? Did you feel okay with it? Was it something like, because we were talking a little bit off mic before we started talking about feelings like
Yeah.
shame and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I remember this clearly. My sister and I, it was summer vacation. We were watching either Ricky Lake or Montel Williams. And they were talking about, because back then when you came on a talk show, it was like, oh my gosh. And I turned to my sister, who was 9 or 10 at the time, and I might have even been younger. And I looked at her and I said, would you still love me if I told you I was bisexual? And she's like, of course. And I was like, okay, great. I was like, cool, because I think I am. And then I told my mom that, because I was very open with her about my experiences. And I said, Mom, I think that I'm bisexual. And she's like, okay,
Hmm.
cool. And so I really had no shame when it came as a young person being able to have, and maybe my mom just thought it was like a thing, like a
Like a
phase.
phase or something. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was always dating boys. So I think that she wasn't really, and honestly, back then it's like, how do you really find, or how do you go about doing that? And or seeking out, dating or girls. And I think around our time, because I think it's around the same age. So around that time, it was getting a little bit more understood. You had the groups and everyone kind of knew who the different people were. And because I hung out with so many different groups, it didn't really matter. And I really just wasn't super attracted to any of the girls in my school anyway. So it was not hard to subside any feelings. But then as I got older, I think it wasn't that I was shameful of liking women. It was more my idea of what I wanted relationships to be and what society thought my relationships to be. And so my shame and guilt came more with as I met someone that I, loved dearly, not being able to be honest with how I wanted the relationship to be.
Mhm. It is like a deep challenge, if you're a bisexual person and there's not a lot of like room in the culture of what you're supposed to do
Right.
with that once you want to have a more longer term relationship or ultimately like a marriage. There's just isn't the
Yeah.
space within that. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder about
Hmm.
that all the time. Yeah, 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 yeah. Maybe before we do the marriage thing, I'm just curious for you all too, because I'm probably a little bit more like the Gen Xy person in this group.
Hmm.
And I would say, for me, at least where I grew up, and I grew up in a probably pretty conservative part of the Chicagoland area, all things being equal, kind of like blue collar, working class kind of thing, but more conservative. And there was just a lot of, I mean, I hate to use the phrase, but it's slut shaming, right? It was
Oh,
really
yeah.
bad, you know? Now I look at my daughter's 20 and it's a lot better. Now I want to say it's perfect, but for like
Correct.
the Gen Z kids, it's better for sure.
Hmm.
She would sometimes tell anecdotes like we'd let the people have, I'd let people have parties in the house and people would have some pretty, my daughter would have some pretty wild parties here. And you'd hear the anecdotes afterwards. She'd be like, "Oh man, that girl who was sleeping with that guy in that party, my growing up, it would be a big deal, and there'd be a whole bunch of crap dumped on that person." So, I know,
Yeah.
how was it for you all, you Phaedra, and then I don't know, like just Gen Z looks different to me, but like for people who are in that millennial range, how was that for y'all, or how was it for you, Phaedra? I mean, specifically.
That's actually really funny because I don't even know how this happened because it's very similar. I was at a party and we had, so where I went to high school, we had your rival school. And I apparently got so much, my name was going around that school as being whatever. And
Mhm.
I was like, well, you know what? They're talking about me. So there must, whatever. And I didn't. And then it happened at another school because somebody that I had, didn't do anything with had told a bunch of people who was like a close friend of mine, told a bunch of people at his school that we did something. And I'm like, well, you know what? I mean, as long as you tell them I'm good, I like, what am I going to do about it? Because it's not even true, but I didn't put much mind into it. And yeah, everyone knew that I liked boys and everyone knew that I was way ahead of my time on what I wanted to do, what I was curious in. And I was a go-getter, I think I would be like the Me Tooer of my high school because I really pushed boys into to different, like, not to, I wasn't forcing anyone to do anything. I wasn't that, but I definitely was like, let's try this. And they were like, I'm not comfortable. And so, and that's why I think I started dating older people because I was able to experience what I wanted to experience at that time.
So you like wanted to explore in a way that even these teenage boys weren't totally comfortable with, yeah, because it was just too
Correct.
mature and kind of like over their level.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I guess starting at 9 years old, being interested in and talking to my mom and having a couple experiences that weren't fun. And, you know, I mean, you don't know what you're doing. And so then all of a sudden I would read and do research and talk to my mom. And, it was I think a very natural like progression
I
of.
s- sometimes wonder, when there's those teenage experiences too, whether it doesn't like I don't know, like steal you up a little bit so that, you kind of, okay, people are gonna give shit, fine, fuck it, I don't care. You get a little of that
Mhm.
thing going too, right? Which I think is
Yeah.
probably healthy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's that what's the word I'm looking for? Um I can't think of the word. Never mind. I'll probably think of it in like 20 minutes and say it. But I
Yeah.
can't think of it now. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, it was kind of weird for me when I was a teenager. I was really sick. I had a lot of health problems. And
Mm.
I was totally fine with being friends with like gay kids in the school, though I wasn't gay,
Mhm.
This whole big thing developed like I was gay and I had AIDS. And it's like
Oh wow.
spread through the
Oh
whole thing. And I don't know if I fully
wow.
got it. I was talking with somebody recently about it, and I was like, wow, okay. And now you get weird reactions from people, and I mean, it's
That's the one.
fine, but it was one of those things where, okay, well, that happened. And then maybe in the end, it kind of, in a certain sense, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And you just come out with more character, right? To do what you want. Yeah.
Still harsh. It's still like feeling wise and where you're at developmentally and what that does to you. But yeah, like you said, if you can get through something like that, because I imagine at that time that was I mean, that was like, they know how to hit it hard on you, right?
Yeah, and I
That
wasn't
was
gonna
what they
not
do.
be friends with these gay kids. I wasn't gonna do it. You know, I mean, I
No,
was like, these are friends. I'm not gonna like all of a sudden back off on these, friendships with these
it's up.
people. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So then Faydra, so you have this, kind of budding viewpoint desire as you're growing in high school, and as you know you're you're married, because you got married pretty young, right?
30, not too
Yeah,
young.
married 30.
Oh,
Oh, that's not bad.
But we were together like since like I was 20. So we were together roughly 20 years.
Right,
So yeah, so about 22, 23 is when we started dating.
right. So that's pretty young. I mean, that's not that.
Yeah.
Right, and you were in this committed thing and everything
Mhm.
else, right? So, as your, relationship is developing and all of that, like you're still developing your ideas around sexuality, around
Mhm.
connection, around community, around all that stuff started developing, and I'm assuming that you had to find different outlets,
Yeah.
for some of these kinds of things, if you want to share some of them, because I think it's interesting for people who might be in a similar situation, or single still, and looking to like express some of these internal like things that they're, that because this is this is not a
Yeah.
character, you know what I'm saying? So yeah.
So I think during that time I drank a lot. I was in the nightclub industry. So I ended up drinking a lot and was able to, you know, I was never kept from having friends, right? So I ended up knowing, how should I say, you're asking for outlet. My outlet was I danced. I was a go-go dancer for a long time. So I was able to like express myself, feel sexy, and I drank a lot during my 20s. And I think, I was quite the saboteur. When we talk about like archetypes, it's like I definitely was in that saboteur lifestyle. I would stay out late. I was not making it easy for my then boyfriend to accept me, and he did all the way through. He's like, sow your oats, get it out of your system. I was very honest at one point when, I knew that he wasn't going to be enough, but then at the same time, he was willing to accept me for all that. So I didn't have many outlets except for staying out with people, like my friends, and being out all night, and like just creating a really destructive environment for myself, but not realizing that that's why I was doing it, because I was still so uncertain. I'm like, I love this man so much. Um, and that's where I guess we can start getting into that feeling of like not listening to yourself or trusting oneself.
Mm,
I became that woman who, for all intent and purpose, during my life was strong and I knew who I was. And then coming to this point in my life where this person, because around 20 something, all of a sudden dark stuff starts coming up, right? From like your childhood and things, because you're evolving, you're growing. So life is changing. And I wasn't really understanding what was happening with me. I think, knowing this now, didn't realize this before.
right.
I didn't trust myself. I didn't listen to myself. I was like, listen, this man loves the shit out of me. And he is putting up with my stuff in this growth period of mine. And I owe him that, because what do I know? He's a little bit older than almost 10 years older than me. So I'm like, this man he knows his stuff. He's spiritual. He's got all this stuff going, and he's just wanting to see that I'm happy. And I need to trust that.
Hmm.
And so that is where it all began, is just this life of now becoming, this girlfriend, having this, relationship with him, and then moving forward. So the outlet for me, there was none except partying, and we'd have so much fun. And so that's kind of where that laid.
like I'm always like I'm really obviously from all the episodes we did last year that Daniel was talking about earlier, and we talked a little bit about these off mic. I'm always really fascinated by like the social pressures people feel around this.
Yeah.
So did you feel like when you're talking, you're meeting somebody, you're in your early 20s, and there's a
Mhm.
kind of an idea of how you're supposed to be, and it's very intense. I mean, did you feel all that stuff? Like, okay, there's some way I'm supposed to be, so I better do this thing. Was that
I
going through your head too?
I did because I never actually had an idea that I wanted to be married. I had a family, well, a family member of mine who never got married. She was living the life, traveling, doing all the things, and I'd say that she was like my spirit person, right? I was like, this woman's having so much fun and she's doing it on her own. Now, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors
Right.
mentally or emotionally,
Yeah.
but seemingly so. I resonated with her lifestyle and in having her freedom and being able to do that. And so, yes, once you're with someone, and I already knew I didn't want kids. So then there was that.
Oh, okay.
So I'm already against the grain, and we had already had that discussion. So now, randomly, this day came where I wasn't even thinking about marriage, and it just like came up, and I said, okay, well, this is what the universe, this is what spirit, this is what all the things want for me. And he's down. And so nothing that I think matters.
Hmm.
And so I'm going with this because I can learn and I can change myself because he's so wonderful and I'm okay. And so he makes me a better person.
That's some pretty complex honesty,
Yeah.
to be honest, like the way you're talking about. That's not simple at all. That's complicated, right? It's
Yeah.
complicated feelings. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Like
Yeah.
processing it through because it's not simple. No.
And I want to say that there was nothing that he did on a level of, because maybe some people I imagine might interpret that as, well, he was forcing me or he was
Mm,
pressuring me or the things he was
yeah.
saying. This was all my own. I remember him asking me, and this is what you want to do? And I was like, yes, of course. This was my own insecurity and all these things coming out, and not being able to be honest with myself because I didn't trust my voice. And I didn't, it was all, yeah, it was my own mistrust of myself. And then when you have someone that has so much trust in you and has all the things that you're lacking at that moment, it's filling you until it's not,
Mm.
Mm.
you know?
And so
How
then,
about like, oh, sorry, Dan, you go ahead. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
no, so I'm just saying, so then like, so you enter into this union, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
as at a particular point in your life. And so does your
I mean, just real quick, that's a long time too. That's like 20 years of your life, right? Just to
Half
like,
my life.
that's the part that
Yeah.
like is interesting to think about. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Yeah.
out Daniel. It's
no,
just
you're
like, wow,
good.
that's a thing.
Do,
Yeah.
does your focus shift at all at that point for a while? Did you take, because you want to be, and you're not just dating anymore. Now it's like a
Yes.
consummated partnership. And you said that you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna trust in the universe that like this is here
Yeah.
for me. So I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna try to be good at this,
Yes.
and
Mm.
and during that time, did you have to change your focus, or did your focus change to like say, okay, I'm going to express myself in different ways, or I'm going to,
Yeah.
because those urges don't just like, not got urges, but those vehicles of
Needs.
expression don't just disappear. Those needs, they don't just disappear. And so I'm imagining, or I'm wondering like, how
Yeah.
did you consciously, change?
Um, so consciously, yes, I decided that I was going to, work on really making him happy and and just, making sure I have this perfect little house. We never fought, which usually means that that you don't communicate. If you don't argue, you don't have conversations, the communication's not there. And um I so that was, yeah, into my 20s and into my 30s. So I guess I would still I made some not interesting. I made decisions that were bad during the course of time. And and then, we would, when we finally talked about that and realized that, what we wanted out of the relationship wasn't moving forward. But yeah, I guess that whole time during the 20 years, my outlet, like I said before, it really was partying and just numbing myself. Now I can say this. Before, I would never say that it was ever a self-medication thing, but I think numbing myself to my feelings and working late. I guess massage actually helped me to be able to connect with people, and obviously not in a sexual way, because that's not what I do. However, it was still giving me connections in a different way. I spent a lot of time as years went on, and I think especially after marriage, I realized that I was spending way more time with my friends, all like not necessarily being present. And then we talk about it, and it would be like, okay, yeah, we're going to change. And then we just get right back into patterns. And so for me, I found emotional connections with a lot of other people, which I felt were loving. And so that kind of took a precedent over what I was getting at home. But then I'd come home and want to be like that with him, and I wasn't receiving because our cycles were off, right? Like I get home, he would be at this place in his day, I'm at another place in the day, I go to bed at this time, he goes to bed this time. So we were always cycling at different times. And so I think that I just became more involved with my friends and being with them and hanging out with them, and that really fulfilled me at the time, until we'd have a conversation and then try to change our own intimacy or our own thing. Yeah, but then it becomes just an ugly cycle, and it's
Danny and I, like, one of our like subject matters of the last, I don't know how long, Daniel, like last half a year or something, we've been talking a lot about like repression feelings. And then the idea of like sublimation. I'm being all psyche about this, but that's sort of my background, right? So, like the whole idea, I think we all have experienced this, all of us, right? You repress stuff, and then it, like what Daniel was saying, it doesn't go away. It needs some outlet some way or another. And so, people will put that in different places, almost kind of like what, even in your question, Daniel, I sort of heard that idea of like, sometimes it goes into work. This part of my life, sexuality isn't happening over here. Intimacy, I'm gonna put it into my work. I'll put my energies this way, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a sublimation thing, right? Or sometimes it's like, we'll act out. Like, okay, I'm not getting what I want over here. I'll act out kind of crazy over here in some other way. I'll burn the energies out some other way, and maybe I'll live a little bit more wilder in some other ways, to kind of just find some outlet for these things. But I mean, what you're saying, Daniel, what you're talking about, Faydra, is it doesn't go away. It's still there some way or another, right? Yeah. I guess like the other thing about it, in this period, when you're younger, 13 to 20 or whatever, you're like, okay, I have feelings. I have bisexual feelings.
Yeah.
You have that thing where, okay, this is probably going to have to go latent, that part, which I don't think is easy at all. And maybe that's something you can share of what that was like for you. Because like, okay, I want to do this partnership with this person, and this whole other side of me has to go someplace else.
So porn.
Okay. The classic American answer, right? That's the most blunt American answer.
Yeah, I think that was my outlet for many, many years on many, many fronts. And I realized many years ago I would be like, oh yeah, because I had gotten up to, I would watch porn a lot, and not because of it more than just Because I'd always like go like gear towards more like the romantic stuff.
Mhm.
Because I'm a romantic by heart, 100%. I love all the romance stuff. And so to me, that just that could like their energies towards each other, regardless how fake it is. That's how I just, yeah, that's how I would kind of get that part out of it. Yeah. So
I actually kind of like understand that because if I do anything that's going to be porn, I usually like it when it's more like amateur stuff where you can tell these people actually can like each other, you know, and it's not like it's a total act of some fake
right.
scene. I'm like,
There's
I
not a
don't need that.
director in the
Yeah.
back. The
Like a
lighting.
boom mic comes through and there's a shadow off of some person's ass as the thing goes. Yeah, yeah, I totally get it. I'd rather, okay, this might be cheaply shot in some whatever, but at least these people like each other.
They
You know
like
what
it.
I mean?
I can
Yeah,
understand that. Hmm.
there's a connection with the two people.
Yeah,
That's
that's
worth.
good.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that.
So
All
Yeah.
right.
go ahead, Eric, go ahead.
No, go please. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, all this, so this time is happening. You're,
Hmm.
I'm not going to say unable to express yourself, but there's needs that are not being met. You're kind of moving through life as you're, trying your best to fit into a mold that probably is not for you at that time, but you,
Sure.
but you made the agreement, you made the commitment, you went in honestly, openly, trying to, be in that particular groove, if you
Yeah.
will. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. It
No.
wasn't enough. Not anything on your partner. It just your makeup didn't allow you to be in that thing naturally without
Right.
feeling while feeling comfortable, I guess I could say,
Yeah.
And so then your that relationship sort of evolves and kind of comes to a
Yeah.
conclusion. And now that, and how long has that been now? Couple years, year
So
and a half?
that was, I think, I think it was finalized in December of 22.
Okay.
So, and we separated in January of 22. I moved out. So yeah, so it's been a couple years. God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it's been a couple years, and now you're on your own and
Uh-huh.
able to do as you please, do as you
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
which is an interesting journey, to say the least. um
Yeah.
Looking back at it now, what are some of the things that you are happy about, grateful for, or have learned a lot from? And what are some of the things that you wish you would have known ahead of time? Not that you're going to change because they're lessons for you,
Right.
but just like, like if someone else is on the similar path, right? You could be like, hey,
Yeah. I definitely say this a lot. Not that I wish I would have known. I not even wish. Yeah, I guess I wish I would have continued that person I was in so much of my childhood, of that honest and outgoing, and the things that started to happen in junior high and high school, which they mold a lot of who we are in our 20s and 30s. But I I wish I'd continued to believe in myself and trust myself and be really knowing of what I wanted, know what I wanted and stick to it.
mm,
Because what happens is when you're not honest with yourself, you can't be honest with other people. And when you're not honest with other people, especially ones that you adore, um, it just creates such a world of hurt and unfairness. So looking back, I wish I had been honest on all accounts at the beginning, and trusted myself. And I think that's the biggest thing that over the last couple of years being on my own, I've been able to really dive deep into all my shadow work and dive deep into, um, even like I was saying before, my values. I never really thought about value system and I didn't really even know what it was. And I'm like, what is this value system? And I go, okay, freedom. And I took like, the test online and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is nothing new. I've been a legit free bird since I was a child, and that has never gone away. I mean, of course, we get more experience in life. I've just been a natural, just a butterfly, right? And it's okay. And not only to know that, but say it's okay.
Mm.
And I'm I've learned to love myself unconditionally, which was really hard. And back back then. And the the what's the word I'm looking for? The ability to do that over the last couple years and be alone in my home. I really do love my space. It's my space the way I want it to look like. The energy coming in is how I want it. And so those things to me are just top tier important in my life. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I have that opportunity to do this for myself.
Yeah, I was really like fascinated. We were talking about some of the episodes again from last year, even like off
Mhm.
mic, and you were
Yeah.
talking about like your core value is freedom. We said it off mic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like one of the things where you're like, this is it, this is the core value. It's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But like I learned a lot, with the episodes Daniel and I did, just thinking a lot about Carl Jung and his
Yes.
observation, like, okay, there's roles and
Hmm.
it's cool if you fit them, but if you don't fit them, it's hard, right? And you can try to force yourself into it, and it sounds like you tried really hard to do it. You're like, okay, I'm gonna try really hard. I'm gonna throw myself into this thing, but it was never
Hmm.
like the fit, right?
Yeah.
And almost, which is maybe at this point in the culture, we can just be more honest about this and just be like, hey, sometimes this doesn't fit people. Yeah.
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 And I know we'll move forward, but yeah, I think too that also the things, the just the destructive behavior on my part to myself too, that was a huge indicator. I was tired. I ended up just getting really exhausted,
Mhm.
like not being honest. And grateful for him. He totally was very, I mean, I want to say supportive because there's moments when one is not, but I've gotten a lot of support from him because where he is in his life and his understanding of humans, he's, you know, come to an understanding of me finding my way. And so it's very like special.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, but it's been quite a I can't believe it's been 2 years already. But yeah, it's you're right. It's just been it's good to have um those moments and understandings and being able to be by myself, because a lot of people can't and they don't want to be after a breakup or whatever, no matter how many years. The being by myself and having those moments to really like bask in all that grossness and like beauty and all the things, because they all go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's kind of funny in the culture. I know it's like almost like a stereotype. You watch a movie and the relationship doesn't work, and then usually they point out one of the two people has to be a creep or something,
Yeah,
right?
always,
Uh-huh.
Or the
always.
woman's a biatch or something, and like
Yeah.
always has to be blamed on somebody. But sometimes it's better that we get to the point where like, hey, it was nobody's fault, right?
Right.
It's not
Right.
like that. But the stereotype is always like you have to be someone has to be the bad one in the
Yep.
partnership. Someone has to take the
Yeah.
blame. And that's always how the stories are too. Like,
Always.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's, it sounds like a lot healthier just to say like, hey, and it's
Yeah.
it's nice to hear a story where it wasn't like, one of the people wasn't doing their best, under the circumstances. They were doing their best. It just wasn't the right
Yeah.
circumstances for people. Yeah.
That's a great
Much
way of
healthier.
putting it. So a great way of putting it. And I also believe that we all operate on our level of consciousness, right? So, and at the beginning of our 20 years, my level of consciousness wasn't very high. And he gave me the platform over the years to find that. And then when it came to the end, uh, we had to each go through our own thing. And I think he likes my person better now, like where I'm at mentally. and how I can communicate. And I don't want to speak for him, but I feel that there's more, because I have better things to say, and I'm not just
Well, it's kind of like you're being more yourself, right? When
Yeah,
you're
I was
more
just gonna
yourself, you're
say.
I
always
am.
more interesting, right? Like,
Yes,
this is what I
yes,
actually think, right? As opposed to like
yes.
trying to like fake it out in some
Uh-huh.
way that I think is going to make things smoother or whatever,
Yeah,
that the situation.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe the one thing, because we have talked with people who go through these kinds of separations. So how is it for you? And then maybe we'll talk about the more, some of the other stuff
Yeah,
afterwards. But
the fun stuff. Yeah.
was it like the fun stuff? But was it like scary for you after all that time? Or were you more like, hey, I'm ready to get out and do my thing? And, or kind of a mix. I mean, how was that?
It was scary at first. Like the very first day we had like the conversation, I was scared. And then not so much, because we were still like living together. And then I moved out, and then I was like, okay, here's that first step. And I think, to be honest with you, it's a bit scary now because I'm going through another transition on what I'm feeling, of what I want and all the things. Um, so I'm scared again, because we still talk and I would consider us friends. Um, and he's gone through a change after, post on Mary. So I am a little, there's a little fear and scary, and each year has its own difference of why it's scary. But I think initially, because there was so much anger, that was scary. But all along, I knew in my heart, going past that, digging deep, it was the best for me. And maybe at some point I would say him, but I don't know that for sure, because
Mm.
I don't want to speak for him.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So I guess, all right. So now you're like a single person. And then was it like, okay, now I'm going to explore these things I haven't explored for all these years? Did it just come like, okay, this is it. It's
Mhm.
flooding out now? Yeah.
Here we go. Here I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been interesting. The first year I spent, I just spent nurturing my relationship with myself and hanging out with the friends that I wanted to hang out with. But spend the most time just alone, and not in a bad way or a depressive way, but more in a way that, like, this is not me and everybody else time. This is me time. And this is time for me to grow and understand myself, because you just left this. So you owe it to yourself to figure your shit out. And so now, last year, I ended up, I don't even know why I did this, but I ended up getting on this website, which is for swingers. And I was like, and they were having this New Year's Eve party. And it just so happened to be at a place where all my favorite Chicago DJs, like my house DJ, music DJs, were spinning. And I'm like, I'm going to go by myself. So I went by myself, and they had their own little private thing within this big party. And, I was meeting people, and I was like, I'm just going to see what it's like. And it was cool. Like, I stood out. I mean, not only because I was wearing a full on like sequence one piece outfit that was pink, right? Not because of that, but because, like, I don't know, I just have a presence, I guess. And so by the end of the night, I got some invitations. Oh, we're having this party, back place, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? I had one drink. I danced my ass off. I'm going back to my own house, like my own place, and I'm going to finish this dance party. And I did. And it felt so good. And exchanged some numbers with people. And then, first day I'm on this website, though, like, flooded with and I'm just like, this is overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I learned a lot about, there's some couples that have like multiple women a week, and there's some couples that just kind of do this once in a while, and a lot of couples that are like, we just like to get to know you, and then if something happens, great. If not. And I got to practice where my boundaries were. I got to practice saying no. I got to practice saying thank you for, thank you for a fun time, but I don't think that we're, this isn't going to work for me. And so that was the biggest part of getting into that, was just practicing my own strengths and the fact that I can say no, and that not fear of people not liking me because I say no. And that was huge for me, I think.
Was that like a conscious identity thing that you were doing? Because you used the word unicorn before, where you're like, hey,
Yeah.
maybe I'm this, or was it more like kind of just intuitively you just started doing stuff and you discovered
Well,
maybe I'm a unicorn?
yeah. So I went in knowing that my sole purpose of being, not sole purpose, I don't mean that. That's not the right word. The idea of learning that open marriages and open relationships, I was curious as to how their dynamics were, and seeing, and as I got to know more couples, I was very impressed with their honesty, with their love for each other, their families, how they operate, their rules. And I was like, you know what? I like, and then having them come and come to me and be like, hey, yeah, let's go out, let's hang out, and then enjoying my company and having still a friendship, because we would sometimes just go out for drinks, right? Nothing happens. And I was like, this is great. I so just loved the relationship dynamic with them. And till now, and I've met so many different couples now, through friends. And I really, first and foremost, just love talking and getting to know, how long they've been in it, what they do. There are some couples that actually won't mess with unicorns because there's so many emotions. So there apparently are a lot of unicorns too that have maybe not the right reasons or are not as self-aware and get into these things. And probably, like we discussed off air, being more into the poly stuff rather than just the swinger stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
How much emotion is there going to be between
yeah,
any person in that married couple and then the new person who's entering into the
yeah,
dynamic?
So maybe
Where are people comfort levels with that? Yeah.
mm-hmm.
maybe just for maybe some of the audience who might not know the difference, can we
Oh,
maybe one of you cool cats talk about maybe like swingers versus polyamorous?
you had a good way of saying it before, Eric, if you want to
Oh, okay, I
discuss
could try it again. So I
yeah.
think some people have like usually the lingo goes something like you can have open marriages,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe the swinger thing is usually more communities of people, parties,
Yeah.
things like that. It has that social element to it. Where
Mm-hmm.
some people might have an open marriage and they just meet people online or something. They're not
Yeah.
necessarily doing that. But there are kind of communities of swingers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And has more of that feeling to it. And then the polyamory thing is really more the idea like, okay, I want more of a longer term thing where there's a more of an emotional, intellectual heart connection, more the
Yeah.
romantic part, almost like what you were talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because if, in some of the swinging thing, and this is like the stereotype, but there's some truth to it where, you don't necessarily want that emotional connection with this other person. It's more of
Right.
a explore our sexuality thing, express our sexuality part, but not necessarily like the emotional connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. That seems to be maybe kind of a difference. And then some people might even have like real red flags or boundaries around that, but that would be
Yes.
like,
Yes. Yes.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
I find that being who I am, whoever it is that day, when I come into the situation, uh, I've met some people who have brought me into their world and their friends, their group of friends, and I found so many like cool people. And I had to take a second, and this is actually fairly recently, where I had to step back and understand that, the majority, like these are all people that are married or seriously dating. And this whole group is that. And until I maybe have another person, I'm not necessarily, I'm cool, whatever, I'm not looking to, go and disrupt the flow of anything. But they don't know that, because some of the stories I've heard of some of the women that come into these situations, they've started some some ripples, right? And whether purposely or, you know, by on accident. And I know my place. I'm, you know, I feel like I'm pretty self-aware, and I know my wants, my needs, and we, you know, talked about all that. And I think that for a lot of women coming into this, they're kind of just like, oh, it's gonna be fun, it's a free for all. And that's not, you know, that's not how I feel. So the friendships that I make in these situations, I do find important. And so I do, you know, I'm realizing that the other stuff might be harder because I'm not really wanting to like just go to parties and do all that stuff. So I'm coming to terms with the feeling like, hey, that was fun. The whole unicorn thing was fun. But is it really fulfilling? Is my body and my heart and my mind aligned that when I want to do these things, like when I want to go into this, it's actually like doing something good for me. And I don't know necessarily that it will for much longer.
We were kind of describing it when we were talking off mic beforehand, like, okay, this is a continuing story, right? This is not a story that's done. This is a process that's continuing to grow and develop for you. Just on the communication thing, because I know people in poly world in Chicago, and the communication thing, I do respect that. There's something interesting when people really have to talk, you know?
Oh yeah.
And my one of my poly friends has this thing where he says, like, you know, sometimes when, you know, he meets women who are like non-poly people, but he's just getting to know them, he's like, wow, you're really talking. Like, we're really talking. Like, we're communicating. This is not being phoned in. Like, this is for real. And that part, I feel like a little bit like the same way you. I like knowing people and talking and like really having that thing of really like, let's be honest and let's really talk things through and let's know what it really is. And these things sometimes make you do that, right?
Yeah, that's me. I like to be very open, especially when I'm hanging out with new people that I'm just going out who I know aren't part of who I imagine aren't part of lifestyle because I haven't met them. I've gone out with some people that aren't necessarily that way, and I feel like I've scared a few people. You know, there's because I'm very like upfront, you know, second date, I'm just like, here's me, here's my stuff. And I'm telling you this now, and it's a lot, and you can digest it. I just want to put it out there because here's where I'm at right now. And I don't want us like getting to know each other. And I feel like that's a lot because I wasn't like that before. And so is there maybe a better way for me to communicate these things? Maybe, but I just don't want to beat around the bush with stuff anymore. Like, I don't have time. Like if you
maybe create
what?
maybe create a pamphlet
With my picture on the front, like,
so here is this, read it, and then, you know.
The person has to check each box that they read it and sign on the back.
Like get a QR code with a website.
Yeah, there you go.
Here we go. Here's me. Just, you know, read it to your disclosure. No, but yeah. And so I don't know. I kind of feel that the communication is, and people, I feel like there's a lot of confusion, and some individuals listening or, you know, who aren't in this world are kind of like, oh, but you had talked about slut shaming before. Like, oh, they're just in this to like be this and this and the other thing. And what I found is that these individuals, in my experience, who are in this world, like really have strong relationships, have been together since high school, 20, 30 years now. And they trust each other and they are looking for something. And that's another thing too. I mean, this may not last forever, this idea that they want to do this, but being able to have them honestly open up to me and share this adventure that they're going on. I really, I love that. And I love that openness. And it's not always about, many times it is just having that sexual experience and, being done with it and then, forgetting. I do really enjoy the 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 friendship or the relationship part of it, and not meaning like a committed or anything, but just, having something that's you're sharing your lives with each other and they want to get to know you. It's not like, hey, just come over at noon and have some fun. Um, yeah, and if some people think that they think that's what this world is all about, and not in every circumstance is that about, and what I've noticed with the groups that I've hung out with is they do a lot of just fun stuff together. I mean, they're always going out, they do trips, they do, just friend stuff that doesn't entail anything more, but they are comfortable with each other because this is like, they're the weird people. We're the weird people.
Yeah, it's so like God, how do you like the way these things are handled in any given culture is just like the way that culture does it, right? So the whole idea, like it's supposed to be some particular thing, it doesn't have to be some particular thing. Like people in the whole history of people have done this a lot of different ways, and people want different things, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
the other thing that like really struck me, and I'm gonna give a little shout out to one of the sex positivity podcasts that I stumbled across at one point when I was sort of interested in this. It's
Mhm.
something you're just like stumbling across things. So it was
Yeah.
called My Life on the Swing Set.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's clever. And
It's
so
really great.
they did the thing where I was listening to one of the episodes and they were doing a public talk, and it made me think of some of the things you were saying, because they just said, well, you try something and okay, maybe you like it, maybe you don't. But if you try it and it isn't something you like, it's not the end of the world. It's
No.
okay. And
Yeah.
you're really given that vibe too. Okay, you tried something, okay, that's cool. I tried it. I did it. Maybe I was into it. Maybe I wasn't into it,
Right.
you know. And they talk
Right.
about like with all kinds of things, like, maybe there's a guy who's never been with another guy before. So you tried it.
Yeah.
You liked it or you didn't like it. You didn't like it. Okay, you don't have to go home and like feel all broken up about it.
Right.
It's okay. You tried something and that's it.
And yes, and that's like what you were talking about with the whole shame stuff. It's like and that shame comes from like, oh, what are people going to think about me? Well, don't fucking tell anybody then. Like, you don't have to share stuff with everybody. It's like you did it. And it's like, don't be so hard on yourself. You didn't hurt anybody else. This is your own adventure. This is your life. And you don't know if it's going to make you happy until you try some things. Right. So yeah, but I think especially with this and like what you were saying, just in the sexuality portion of things, uh, yeah, there's a lot of fear in a lot of different things for sure. And thinking that like, well, I'll never do that because that means that this is going to make that I'm going to da 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 da. And you're like, nah, man, like relax. Like this is a safe space, first of all. And, get out there, explore, you know,
Yeah.
but to each their own, whatever's going to make you happy.
It was interesting in this whole podcast. I was listening to it and I was like, wow, these people are being really honest. So Daniel and I were joking before you came on. I got this mic, it's a little dangly. Lately, my mic has a little erectile dysfunction thing going on
Yeah.
here. Needs a little help, like a little Cialis or something. So we're joking
Yeah.
about it. And Daniel said, well, it's kind of it's more of a grower than a shower. Which is kind of like, does your penis show or does it grow?
Right, right,
And so
right.
we were joking about it, and then, but one of the guys on the podcast, and I was like, I can't believe he's talking about this. He was like, well, I'm more of a grower than a shower. So I have to go in these situations and I have to tell
Yeah,
people, like, hey, I'm more of a grower than a shower, just so you know. And you had to get
love
over
that.
that anxiety feeling. And I was like,
Mhm.
and I was listening to it and I was like, that's some bold shit, to feel that
Right.
comfortable in yourself, because that could feel so anxious for people, body
Yeah,
image things and all that, no matter who you are. Right.
totally.
And I was like, man,
Totally.
that is like some deep shit they're talking about this,
Mm.
they're doing on the podcast for everybody to hear, you know. But he was just like, okay, this is my honest thing, and
Yeah.
you go into relations with people and it's just like, hey, this is it. And I was like, this is amazing how honest you have to be with yourself in those situations, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel as though this, well, I don't think that I don't hide like I don't hide this part of my life or I don't lie about it. However, I'm not really, it's not something that I'm just like, look at me, like, unicorn, you know. Well, maybe not, because I do wear lots of unicorn stuff. So maybe I am kind of showing, but no one really asked. I think this is really the first time, and, you know, when this is over and it comes out and I share it, I'll really get I'll get an idea of who actually goes on and listens to my stuff. So that'll be great. But I'm really excited. I felt a little trepidation with it. At first, I was like, when Daniel asked, I was like, yes. And then I was like, whoa, oh my gosh, wait a second. Do I? Okay. What am I? And I went through all this stuff in like 2 minutes. And then I was like, take a breath, freaking relax. Like, you're going to be fine. And this is me. And I don't want to shelter that. I think I sheltered it for a very long time, and people don't like it. Fucking don't need it. You know, I mean, I don't know.
Definitely, like, I've had the experience of, like, before Daniel and I are going to do an episode, we're like, I'm going to say some weird shit on this episode. I'm a little nervous. Daniel's always great, because I was like, okay, dude, we'll do it, you know. So that's
Yeah.
Daniel. He'll support you and stuff. And that's like one of Daniel's
Yeah.
qualities.
I mean,
Okay, I got a couple more things in mind. I guess I would ask. I know what you have in mind to ask too, Daniel. But I don't know
we probably got maybe about 5 or 6 minutes left. So
if it's a weird question, you can certainly tell me, Phaedra. But like, if you think
sure.
back to the relationship that you had,
Mhm.
especially since you were kind of knew you were a bisexual person, was it ever a
Mhm.
conversation you all had of like, well, maybe we should just
Yes.
open this up? Maybe
Yes.
we should,
And
you know, and maybe that would make this relationship even better, you know?
yes, the conversations we had at first were not met with much. He was like, whatever. And I don't think he really took me seriously. Because I really did try to like push it in there.
Mhm.
So yeah, so definitely. And then at the end, it was brought up, but we were both, I think he wasn't quite cool with the idea of compersion, which compersion is the idea that you can look at your partner being happy with someone else as well, you know, or, you know, all that stuff. So you're just all accepting of other people making that your person happy.
It's almost like
And
the
so,
idea, like, your other partner being happy, even if it's with another person, doesn't
yeah,
trigger as much jealousy. It triggers like
correct.
maybe it's some, but it triggers more like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm happy for this person.
totally. And
Kind of a
I'm
psychological change. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And that's one thing, if anyone's getting like wanting to get into that whole realm of even just having a threesome, remember that like the sounds that your person makes with you and that joy that they're making with you, you're going to have to listen to with another person. And if you don't think you can accept that, then you need to wait. Like, because that's when problems are going to get started. So don't get into that just because to make your partner happy.
yeah, it's not the visuals or the smells, it's the sounds.
It's the sounds. Well, no, it's true. It's like it's that emotional, because you know the whatever, the pumping and the grinding and the thing, it's like whatever, but that those noises that you think are just for you, then you start hearing them with another person. I mean, that's, I think, can really like shoot you. It's a reaches you to a different level.
That's why I always recommend when people start stuff like that, ball gags for everybody.
Put it
But
in
you
your
recommend that for everything, Daniel.
Also true. Also true.
Say
Yeah,
with
I feel like
fetish.
I've heard that a few
Yeah,
times.
it's like, well, there's a way around it.
Amazing.
I
Yeah.
guess the only other last thing, maybe in the lingo part, might be because some of what you're talking about, Phaedra, almost sounds like these words, which maybe people maybe haven't heard before, like demisexual and sapiosexual,
Oh
which, you know,
yeah.
these kind of words, like demisexual means like for you, your sexuality means you want to feel an emotional connection with someone.
Mhm.
And I think doing those episodes last year that we kind of have referenced here and there, I realized like, oh, that's who I am. You know, I want to
Yeah,
feel that emotional connection, and the sapiosexual is you want an intellectual connection. So there's all
yeah,
this new terminology popping out in the
yeah,
culture, and you might be like, I don't know what any of this stuff is, but
yeah.
demisexual is I want the emotional connection, and sapiosexual has I want the
That's
intellectual connection.
intelligent.
I want the both. And I just
Yeah.
realized, you know, Danny and I were looking through those episodes, and I was like, okay, let me figure out what I really feel. I was like, yeah, that's what I really want more than anything.
What do you
Yeah, I
call
listened to a
spiritual
lot of your
connection?
episodes. Yeah, your episodes I listened to last year, and that was like on, you guys were on at the end of the year with the 2023 Spotify. You guys were like number 2, I think, on my, or 3 on my list of things that I listened to. And so I was like, yes, because you guys got me through. A lot of your topics were pretty relevant.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Last year was the year of the poly excursion, you know.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Carl Young.
This year we're supposed to talk about sex, but it still hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Well, we are a little bit. We're opening it up.
Podcast. We're never just talking like this is like the most sexual episode we've ever had.
For sure.
Well, thanks for having me on it.
Goudson's still
Yeah,
mild.
and this is not, so everybody understand, this is not a classic Christian threesome. Normally that's 2 girls and 1 guy.
That's a FFM thing, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I don't know. I don't even know where to start, Phaedra. Thanks so much. Daniel will do his closing thing, and he's it's big and he's so great.
Thank you guys.
Like, just thanks a lot, man. It's really
Thank
great to
you. Anytime.
yeah, thanks for sharing, Faye. You know, I wanted to have you on. I wanted to talk about this stuff here, but this is kind of the new place where you are, and I think it's nice to hear the journey as to how you got there, and the importance of like really your own understanding and being in your own evolution, right? Like, because when you do it, I talked about this earlier with somebody, a mutual friend that we have, like, if you're usually challenged to your maximum, right? All of your tools are required to get through most of your obstacles, because the ones when you're not challenged, you could see through it. You know, you're like, oh, that's not a big deal, you know? But then when you can't see around it, then you have to use all of your tools, and usually you get a new tool after that situation. And so it's nice to hear you learning and growing after all of this and where you are, and then you're still in a growth phase, you're still in a learning phase. And I think that's, to your point, and to Eric's point over many episodes now, it's not a set, it's not a set thing. You found a new community of like-minded folks.
Yeah.
And yet sometimes it's physically based, but sometimes it's just getting to know people who share this thing. Eric shared a story of a party where when he went to a party, and he was like, oh, you think, he went to a poly party, and right, he was like, someone was like, oh, I think that way, and Eric's like, oh yeah, me too, and everyone's like, oh yeah, me. So you realize that like the way that you view things is shared by other people, and there's like instantaneously a kinship of like-minded folks, and it just takes the barriers to connection down. Even if it's not like a sexual thing, you're just feeling like, oh, this is, I don't like to use it, but this is a safe space of like-minded people who can hold this place for me to express myself, and I'm going to do the same with them because we're coming from a similar place.
Yep.
And I think unfortunately in the society that we have, and in many other societies around the world, because we do have some international listeners, there is not a lot of room for that, actually. I mean, you have to find niches for it, and it's accepted in some spots, but if you don't find yourself fitting in the mold of the rest of society, where do you go? How do you express yourself? When do you do those things? And then who's going to be there with you at the end? That's all kind of a mystery that people are just sort of figuring out as time moves on.
100%. Yeah,
So
I agree.
Yeah, like
Go ahead,
listening
Eric.
to a podcast like this, like for me, I listen to other people talk. Like we're all talking like we all like to talk.
Yeah.
And listen.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, people are sharing these things. So maybe someone listens to, Phaedra talking and goes, okay, I have some of these feelings too.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how it spreads, right? More people get to be free in the end, right? Because you hear other people saying, hey, I think this way. And then the other people feel freed up inside of themselves, be more themselves too.
Exactly.
I hope so.
I think that's
Yeah.
the bodhisattva activity for our little bit of spirituality of this, right?
There we go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Phaedra, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your story with us, and with everybody else here on YouTube or Spotify or Apple or wherever people get their podcasts from. So yeah, thank you. We do appreciate everybody watching, listening, sending messages or whatnot. So if you have any questions or anything like that, comments or whatnot, feel free to leave a comment in the YouTube section. If you want to hit us up, email us at ginandtantra@gmail.com. If you're on Instagram, the Gin and Tantra podcast is where we are. We post all of our little pictures of the video clips up here, and people can, leave a comment there. If for many reasons you want to get a hold of Phaedra, just, send us an email, and we'll connect you.
Yeah.
And we appreciate everybody tuning in and listening and everything else. So if you find our work useful, please feel free and maybe even obligated to share it with your friends, or enemies. You know, you never know. They might become your friend after they hear some magical
You and
words of.
Phaedra can make your enemy into your friend. That's like a
Phaedra is
skill.
going to have a much easier time making your enemy into your friend than me or
Yeah.
Eric will. So, you know, she got that special sauce. So anyways,
Yeah.
Phaedra, again, thanks for coming on so much. We
Thank you
appreciate it.
guys
Eric,
very, very much.
thank you so
Appreciate
much
you
for,
both.
of course, Eric, thanks for doing this as always. And for Phaedra and Eric, this is Daniel. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.